read, and I just like read it voraciously. And then next thing I know, I'm going to the bookstore, checking out the true crime section, and just sort of reading up on cases that were infamous, but also ones that I'd read about previously, but then other ones too that were sort of like a little lesser known. So I never really wrote it. Like I was always interested in reading it, but for years I sort of just went wherever the freelance writing took me. So, it was like, oh, we need an article on turkey insemination. Well, there you go. You're going to go and do all that research in that area. But
so real quick, guys, so 1 second. I think we have a major malfunction here.
What'd you break?
Yes, my
Frick.
Zoom completely crashed and came back, so I apologize.
Well, you're back up.
Yeah, so the show, cut off there.
oh dear, oh no.
Yeah.
Well, can you do
It's
something
still-
with it?
I'm like, it's still up and running on Facebook.
So
it is?
I am actually
Oh, that's good.
recording on my desktop, so I didn't miss anything
Okay.
that you guys said until my Zoom crashed. So I did miss a little bit of the what got you into psychology. So sorry.
Right. No,
Okay.
no worries. Yeah. So I guess the psychology interest, it just kind of came from reading these kinds of books, like there was usually, or if you did a little bit of extra research or exploration, you could usually find sort of somebody commenting on, the psychology of the person or the killer or the group of killers. And it just always fascinated me. Why do people do the things they do, particularly when it comes to violent crime or crimes, like this kind of serial crime or mass murder or those kinds of things.
Which will lead directly into my question. Do you have a favorite true crime show, book, or movie outside of your own personally written one?
Actually, there's been quite a few really good documentaries recently on Netflix. And I have to say that I was quite impressed with the 4-part series one they did on Ted Bundy, the conversations with a serial killer, and because there was quite a few things, and I thought I knew a lot about Ted Bundy, but there was a few things in there that I never knew before, and there was photographs and footage of things that I'd never ever seen before. So it was kind of interesting to get a lot of the descriptions of his life, what he sort of thought was going on. And then, of course, him talking in the third person, in terms of being able to finally confess, but he never really wanted to say that it was him.
Right.
I just thought it was really interesting that there was the two journalists, like they were interesting to listen to, as well as the conversations that they had with Bundy. As far as, there's a really good show. I don't even know if it's still on because I haven't had cable now for many years, but it was on investigative Discovery, and it was called A Time to Kill. Oh no, what was it called?
Oh, it
Yeah,
was
that
a
one
time
where
to
they
kill.
kind of do period pieces. Is that the one, right?
Yes.
And it's they do old fashioned cases, and they do all the clothing and the cars and the architecture and everything is all very based in that time. So it's like a flashback of a crime. And they sometimes focus on well known or famous cases. Other times it's ones that you kind of heard about or not really heard that much about, and they kind of delve into it. And then they're interviewing different criminologists and writers and lawyers. Awesome show. I just love that show.
Awesome. Cool to know.
Yeah. A Crime to Remember. That's what it's called. A Crime to Remember, I think.
And I have to admit, imagine how many of those people, there has to be psychologists for psychologists. Because, they just go through so much and know so much. And I'm going like, how have you not gone on a dark, depressive, downward spiral, knowing all these things? So that's one thing that always intrigued me, actually, when I was going through my psychology and I got my degree, a bachelor's in psychology. I was going like, I think we need help for ourselves first before we, deal with others. But anyways, what do they say? Oh, why people go into psychology because they need help? And I'm going like, yeah. So, but my retort was always, it takes a nut to know a nut.
So not where I thought you were going with that one, but that's okay.
Just keeping Chad interesting.
Yeah, that.
All right.
Next one's you.
All right. So no, and speaking about all this, you mentioned in one of your, I forget which site exactly this was mentioned on, but you talked a little bit about your family. One was your Uncle Vishnu, and Trinidad and Tobago. And I know we shared a quick moment because I'm like, oh my gosh, my grandfather from my mom's side is from Trinidad, from TT.
Oh yes, that's right. We have that connection. Yeah,
exactly. Hey, I still have to do the history, tree family thing. It seemed like maybe we're cousins. But,
I'm
anyways.
so sorry.
I want to know if I'm related to Nicki Minaj's cousin's friend.
I know. It's like, listen, I just want to get into the show for free. But anyways, quick spiral down from the happy to the sad, but unfortunately you mentioned that, and you're telling of your family story that he was murdered in TT.
Mm-hmm.
So do you believe something like that in your life had any kind of influence or influenced you at all to start, delving into the world of true crime or just in general, researching things of this nature?
I suppose so. Like, I don't know if it was necessarily a direct correlation. I mean, I was always interested in true crime, and it even kind of thought of dabbling in it a little bit around the time that my uncle was murdered. But I think what it really did was it really hit home for me, like the just being on the victim side of it, because I think probably everybody sort of goes through their life saying, these things happen to other people, like you never realize that you're going to have somebody in your family who's the victim of a homicide. It's always somebody else. And when it actually does happen to you and it really hits close to home, you're sort of a family member of a victim. And so I think for me, it kind of helped just in terms of being able to sort of say, I'm going to tackle a story where there are going to be people around here, not only the person who was victimized or killed, but I mean the family, the people, the friends, those people that are left to remember that person, and how it's attached to them, that this part of their life is maybe something to do with, they were a victim of a certain killer, or something happened that was very gruesome or painful, for it to keep being brought up. But I guess the other part of it is just in terms of the importance of telling stories. And I don't think there's really any story that's off limits. And so, if someone were to say to me, well, how could you sort of, do you feel like you're exploiting the victims' families even more? It's like, well, I don't know if it really means anything more to them, but I can say, well, I am a family member of a victim, so I kind of know a little bit about what that person's going through. So, and I mean, it's not about trying to be exploitive or doing this for the sake of entertainment. It's really about education, information. I mean, it's interesting to read. They are stories that kind of get you going, but I think it's more from the purpose of not trying to copycat what these folks do, but really to sort of explore some of the things we were just talking about, the psychology and why it happens.
Yeah, and again, that's unfortunately, I have another friend that, again, it was the same thing, who was a family member of somebody who was involved in something that was very much affected them. His sister was killed in the Pulse shooting in Orlando when that happened several years back. And again, exactly, people don't really think about the families until you're the family member or you're a close friend of that person or whoever else. And then, exactly. People talk about, like you said, earlier, Ted Bundy and what he did, but nobody really thinks about the families and how they feel, what they're going through. So that's, something to take consideration. And I know we're making jokes tonight, obviously. We want us to have a good time, but at the same time, yeah, it's something to take consideration. Maybe when it's still fresh, like, hey, give it a moment. So being thoughtful of that.
Mm-hmm.
So and next.
All right.
This will bring us into our next segment.
Right.
Exactly.
What interested you in researching or writing about Jeffrey Dahmer in particular? And did you, once you decided on that you wanted to write about Jeffrey Dahmer, how did you connect with Patrick?
How it kind of came about was I had been I can't remember if I was watching something or reading something, and it was talking about sort of the worst people in history of all time, and sort of there was like Hitler, Stalin, and number 3rd on the list was Jeffrey Dahmer. And it kind of hit me like, wow, that's pretty, like when you think of those sort of like dictators and like these are guys that were really awful to so many people, millions of people. And then suddenly Dahmer's on the list sort of right after them. It just sort of kind of surprised me a little bit. And it's like, from what I know of him and read about him and seen in terms of documentaries about him, yeah, he was a bad guy. He did some bad things, but, was he really evil? Like, I was really kind of curious to sort of explore that a little bit. So I had seen a few documentaries, and I noticed that actually Patrick Kennedy was usually featured in them because he was sort of the go-to guy for Milwaukee police, because he'd actually interrogated Dahmer for a great big long time. And the more I learned, I realized that from hearing stories that, he was the only detective that Dahmer was willing to talk to. So I actually had seen a documentary that came out in 2012 and again featured Detective Kennedy. And I reached out to the director of the film, a young man who's from Wisconsin, Christopher Thompson is his name, filmmaker. And he said, oh, let me just put you in touch with Kennedy. I'm sure he'd love to hear from you. So I sent this little message just saying, how much I enjoyed him in the documentary, how much I really appreciated the way he kind of approached Dahmer, in terms of this, I'm not going to go in there and be a bad cop or good cop. I'm just going to kind of tell him that I'm here to hear his story and not judge him at all. So I appreciated that response to Dahmer, and I let him know. So he did thank me for the letter, and we sort of communicated a little bit back and forth after that. And then I approached him with the idea of doing an article because I said, I have some ideas about Dahmer that I would love to run by you. I said, since you met him and knew him, I think you'd be a good person to sort of tell me, like, yeah, you're on the right track, or no, you've got it all wrong. So this kind of turned into the idea of us getting together. We met in Wisconsin. I met him in Madison, Wisconsin. The film that he was in was actually being featured. So this was a film that came out in 2012, and this was in April of 2013 that we met. And I just drove down there. We did our interview. It was over the course of several hours that we did this, and we had dinner and talked about all sorts of different things. And so in the course of that, I was able to sort of approach him with some of these thoughts and theories that I had. And he said to me eventually, why don't you just take a look at some notes and reports and things that I had? It might help you with your interview, maybe give you a better sense of Dahmer, from the written word, not just from what I'm telling you. And then we sort of said, wouldn't it be great to maybe work together? And I actually had some experience working with writers in terms of helping them develop a manuscript for publication. So I said, I'd be happy to help you. I'd be happy just to just do it, just to see this book get published. So we parted ways in Wisconsin. And again, this was in April of 2013. And unfortunately, about 5 days after we met, I learned that Patrick had a heart attack and died. He'd had a fatal heart attack at home, and he was alone. So I was just shocked. I couldn't believe it. But I did eventually go ahead and do my article. I submitted it to an online magazine called crime.com or something like that, truecrime.com. And they published it. And it was an article called Exorcising Dahmer's Ghost. And so it was a little bit of a profile on Kennedy, but it was also a way for me to kind of flesh out some of these thoughts I had and get his opinion on it. And so that then I sent that to Patrick's widow. She said it was, well done. And she said, why don't you just do whatever you can with his work? If you can turn it into a book, great. If not, whatever, it's just going to probably go back into a desk drawer. So I worked on that for a little while, and then eventually it came out with a very, very small print run and a small publisher in 2016. And then just this year, being the 30th anniversary of Dahmer's arrest and interrogation and everything, when the world learned who Dahmer was, I approached Wild Blue Press, although Natalie was a huge help with that and getting that connection. And they just took it and ran with it. And we were able to update it a little bit, but essentially it's Patrick's story. So that hasn't changed at all, of course. Wow. And that just came out at the end of June. So so that's kind of how it all happened. I would have loved for Patrick to have seen all of this, come of it. But unfortunately, he's not here to enjoy it or to see that it happened. But it was an opportunity to pay tribute to him and to, sort of show his legacy, because this case really, it was a life changer. Once he had that connection with Jeffrey Dahmer, he was known forever as the Dahmer detective. And I dare say that it maybe even changed some of the things that happened in his life. Things may have turned out differently. And to me, that was kind of a fascinating element of the story, was how a single phone call could just sort of change the trajectory, right? He gets this call from the police at the police station. We need you to go check out this guy in this apartment, some weird things in the fridge, whatever. And that's how he met Jeffrey Dahmer. And then boom, his life changed. So that's a little bit of what I wanted to sort of present in the book.
Listen, weird things in the fridge are like expired ketchup.
Sorry, I kind of glossed over that a little.
Just here's a toe and a finger.
No, it was a head. It's okay.
We and I know we talked about this a couple weeks ago in the pre-interview, but just the fact of the time, and now you discussing the timing even more in depth of how you met Patrick. Just the whole, you go from all of this and you hit these chain talk to this director, and he puts you directly in touch, and then you talk with Patrick, and then you guys arrange a meeting, and then he says, yes, it would be great, let's do this. And then 5 days later, he's gone. And like his wife said, like, I'm not going to do anything with this stuff. This is not, she probably had enough Dahmer in her life.
Probably,
that she was like, you know what, the sooner it disappears, the better. Or also it would be, you know, great if we can, I mean, if you turn it into something for his legacy, then wonderful. But yeah, just the fact that, I mean, the fact that you only had 5 days or you only had that one time of sitting with him for several hours and being able to take,
he gave you the notes.
giving you the notes to be able to turn into this incredibly descriptive book. And we'll get more into that a little bit later. But just a bummer that you didn't get to work with him past that, like personally, but getting the notes and that timing in life is kind of just crazy the way like an entire lifetime plays out into just
those fateful moments, right?
Just really.
I was telling them before the show, and I pray that you take this as a compliment. I am a huge John Grisham and Tom Clancy fan, and your book reads like that to me. It is so descriptive and so fluid, and like I can hear you reading certain aspects of it to me in the way that you describe Patrick in your interview with us a couple weeks ago. I hear that like as I'm reading it, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. I just can't put the book down. So I applaud you, and I pray that you take that as a compliment, because it's
I
great
certainly
read.
do. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
My first question on this, which you kind of touched on, but you had a great response to this when I asked you a couple weeks ago, is what was your aha moment? What was it that made you just go, this is what I'm doing. I have to do this. This is where I'm going with this.
Oh my God. What did I say?
I was sitting there like, oh.
Well, there's sort of a few aha moments, I guess. Like, I guess, I mean, there was a lot of things about the Dahmer story that sort of intrigued me, you know, like, I mean, I can think of a lot of killers that I would not be interested in really writing about. I mean, I'm interested in reading about it, but I mean, you know, like any kind of a book manuscript project, I mean, it does kind of take over your life a little bit, you know, I mean, not for your whole life, hopefully, but I mean, for just that period of time when you're really working on it. But I mean, there's just so many interesting elements to the story, you know, like, I mean, and I guess I can kind of, like, you know, when I think of some of the other killers and ones that we've talked about already, you know, there seems to be so much anger about them, you know, like there's so, you think of someone like Ted Bundy, and it really came through, I think, in that documentary that Netflix did in that 4-part series, that, you know, he had a lot of anger towards women, you know, I mean, it was just, he wanted to destroy his victims, and there was a lot of anger, there was a lot of revenge, it was all about kind of getting back at some woman that had hurt him, right? So, and it was just sort of reliving that anger and wanting to get back at her over and over and over again. It was trying to satisfy something in him. With someone like Dahmer, I just didn't see any anger there. I didn't see any hatred there. I just saw a man who was really lonely and needed sort of something to be able to reach out and connect with people. And unfortunately, he never really found it. But there was, you know, there was sort of something about Dahmer that I thought, I think we need to explore him more. I don't know if enough people have really kind of explored. Maybe they've explored like who he was mentally, but maybe not emotionally so much. And, you know, the fact that he was a loner and that he was bullied, and that, you know, he was at a time saying, I'm gay, but I don't know how to handle this. I don't know how my family's going to handle this. They were somewhat religious. Didn't know how his few friends that he had would handle it, or anyone who may have found out while he was in school. So, you know, he was sort of burdened with a lot of things, and he was a very introverted guy. I think some of the other connections were just, I guess, some of the points of the story where, you know, like the guy in Ohio who happened to stop him as a teenager is the guy that came, you know, back 13 years later when they realized, oh my God, we've got Jeffrey Dahmer, this necrophiliac cannibal, and the whole world is talking about him. And this guy from Ohio is like, oh man, I was the one that let him go. And he was like 18 years old, and he had garbage bags with a young body in there. And, you know, the detective in Milwaukee is saying, man, you could have stopped this thing right back when. And the guy turns green, you know, like, and they're like, you know what? He fooled a lot of people. Dahmer fooled a lot of people. He was very good at being a charming person, very deferential, very much very charming.
I'm sorry, wrong time for that joke.
The other thing that kind of intrigued me, is it was a 30-year-old case. So I sort of thought, there's a nice little bit of a start, a beginning, a start, a beginning, a middle, and an end. I mean, he died in prison, so the story is kind of complete. But there's, some other interesting things, like Park Dietz, who's a fairly famous forensic psychiatrist, was one person who interviewed him, and I mean, Mr. Dietz or Dr. Dietz is kind of famous in his own right. Some of the guys that were doing FBI profiling, which is all, everyone's really interested in that now. There's that series Manhunter on Netflix. And so everyone's interested in how that all got started, Silence of the Lambs, behavioral science, FBI officers. And they were profilers who were just starting out who wanted to talk to Dahmer because he was a serial killer. They had him, he was confessing, and he seemed to be willing to talk as well. So yeah, there was like a lot of interesting little pieces of the Dahmer story that I thought, this is kind of interesting. I don't know if enough people know about this, and it'd be interesting to put it all together.
So with that, quick question then, because, well, number one, but number two,
so weird.
You're actually touching about this right now, talking about his family life. Like I said, growing up religious, having those repressed, perhaps homosexual tendencies or something of that nature. His mentality of growing up being bullied, but then also not knowing how to perhaps make a connection with others and maintain that. So what's something maybe from his life or family life or the mentality, again, you got to literally read the notes from Patrick Kennedy himself. So what were some of those aspects that you perhaps learned about that maybe not many people may know about, perhaps?
Well, I think that some of the things that surprised me, and hopefully therefore maybe surprised some of the people who are reading the book, the fact that he was drinking at such a young age, like I didn't know that, like he started. I think I touched a nerve. Wait, I'll make you feel better.
Oh, okay, thank you. See, if we're here, it's a group of social drinking.
I know. But I mean, like for Dahmer, even as a teenager, I don't even think it was social drinking. I mean, I think it was just such a need for an escape. And, like he was sort of raiding his parents, liquor cabinets and stuff, and going to school first thing in the morning, being drunk and drinking during the day at school. Like I didn't know anything about that. So that was kind of interesting to learn. I sort of knew a little bit about the details of like that one young victim of his that got away. Like I sort of knew the rough parts of the story, sort of I could hash it out a little bit, but I guess the details of that, and the fact that there was so many people, like there were the two women on the street with the cops and this young man who Dahmer's there telling them, oh, this is my boyfriend, he's of age, we live together, and he's just drunk too much and took off his clothes and is now on the street. And the people that were around him saying, that's not true. This is a young teenager, and he's in trouble. He's all beat up and bloody. And, just the fact that there were so many people that were just so concerned. I don't think they knew, oh, we have a serial killer in our midst, but they were sort of trying to look out for that victim. And even later, after Dahmer managed to convince them to come upstairs and, I'll show you some ID. Well, he didn't have ID, but he had some photographs of the young man who had been there drinking earlier, toasting the camera, and, he looked like he was in a positive place. He didn't look like he was under any kind of duress. And so he said, yeah, he's just drunk too much. And I shouldn't have gone on and left him with the door unlocked. And, he was very polite to the police. And so they said, well, why would he lie to us? So they just left him there. The poor kid, within 30 minutes was dead. And the neighbors, who were so convinced that this was like a young teenager, even called the police again to say, like, what is it with this kid? Like, I mean, are you sure? And they were just like trying to brush him off, like, oh yeah, everything's fine, ma'am. Don't worry about it. Everything's been taken care of, So just to learn some of those details, I guess, was kind of interesting as well. And the fact that he tried to get back into, like, once he was arrested and he was in prison, like he was in solitary confinement. Everyone just said, you have to be in solitary because you're too famous and you will die if you go into general population. Well, after about a year or so of living in solitary, he said, I want to go out to the general population. So I didn't really know that. Like, I didn't know. I was sort of just under the assumption that he was on some sort of washroom duty when he got murdered, but he was actually living amongst the general population in that prison. And so his days were numbered. Like he knew that, someone was going to target him.
Oh yeah. I mean, seriously, that's freaking nuts.
Do you think he wanted to? Yeah.
Like, because he knew he was there for life.
Yeah.
Dang it! I said the S word.
At this,
I just realized that. Sorry.
at this point, I would welcome it. Basically,
That's his way of saying, I'm happy to die
I
at
don't
this
wanna-
point. Yeah.
basically, I don't
Yeah.
want to be alone for the rest of my life. I'd rather someone just kill me.
Yeah. I think all of those things. Yeah, because I think initially when he was even being sentenced, like they couldn't put him on death row because at that time, I think still to this day, Wisconsin doesn't have capital punishment or the death row. But I think, he said he almost wished for death. Like he felt he deserved death because of everything that had happened and all the things that he had done. And then after he was in prison, he kind of reestablished a bit of a relationship with his mother. She was kind of not around a lot during his trials and sort of when all the media attention was there. But once he was in prison, they resumed a relationship. And so they were calling each other, I think, every Sunday or a second Sunday. And he apparently had said to her, prison is terrible. It's a terrible place to live. And, like my life was basically over and this isn't a life. Like, I don't really want to live like this. So I think there definitely was sort of a bit of a death wish, and I think he was lonely. I think he was very lonely.
So in his first interview, when he was initially arrested, he wanted Patrick to kill him, pull out your gun and just kill me now. So I think it actually started at the very beginning when he was caught.
Yeah, well, I think once he realized that, it was done, he was absolutely captured. He wasn't going to be able to talk his way out of it. I mean, there's a scene, I think, in the book at one point where, they say, well, there's police that are in your apartment right now, like going through your drawers, going through your cupboards and your fridge and everything. And he kind of sat back up in his chair, like, really? He didn't realize that. And I think once he realized, oh my God, everything that I've done is going to come to light. My family's going to find out. My work people are going to find out. Everyone's going to know about this, and it's going to be a nightmare circus. I think he did want to end his life. I think he thought that would just be the best thing, and he didn't really want to face, I think, everything that was going to happen to him. But I think with Pat's help, he managed to actually confess and feel better about it. Feel that he was doing something. This is a way you can actually help the situation.
Can you touch a little bit on his family life from the younger years on through? Because I think that's something that a lot of people would kind of want to know about.
Sure. He was born in Wisconsin, and he was the eldest of two boys. His dad was, I think, a very brilliant man. He is a very brilliant man. He was a chemist and a researcher. He had lots of experiments and things going on. He really enjoyed working as well as furthering his education. His mom was, I'm not sure what she did or was in terms of what her work was or if she went to school or what happened there. But after they met and they got married, she was a stay-at-home mom for the first part of Jeff's life. And then he did have a younger brother. His mom did suffer from mental illness. And so there were periods of time when she was in hospital, it was like a psychiatric ward of a hospital where she was at home, but she was probably heavily medicated. I think she also drank a little bit to kind of help her through the situation. So while she might have been present, it's hard to know how much she was really there for them. So the dad was kind of a workaholic, and then the mom sort of had her issues. And when they were together as a family, there tended to be a lot of fighting going on. So the mom and dad sort of had a really tumultuous relationship. And so Jeff's feeling about relationships and marriage was just, everyone just fights and hates each other. Why would anyone ever get married? So he was a really shy kid, very introverted. I think his dad, when he did spend time with Jeff, tried all sorts of things to sort of try and, get him to be a little bit more popular, try and spark his interest in different things. But Jeff was very shy and quiet and introverted. And he spent a lot of time at this point in their life, they're living in Ohio and kind of a rural area, not farmland and rural, but I mean, there's other houses around, but not city life. And so there were these back roads and highways and byways where he would just kind of go exploring. Somewhere along the line, he got very interested in roadkill and the insides of dead things, as he would put that. And so I guess in magazines or photographs or wherever, he would sort of be interested in those kind of anatomical types of things. And so he would collect these roadkill animals and bring them home and sort of look at them. He would cut them open. He would put them into jars with acid and try and burn the fur off. And this was kind of something that was really fascinating to him. Later on, much later on, they sort of wondered if something like this meshed with the time that he was kind of going through puberty, and that maybe this sort of conflicted with, what was going on with him in terms of sexuality, that somehow that became arousing to him as part of his, sort of journey through puberty. Plus, there was all the conflict with, his homosexuality and whether he could tell people or whether he really felt that. I think he had that desire and that drive, but he really tried to oppress it, and repress it in himself. His dad would say, oh, well, once you get a little older, you'll meet a nice girl, you'll get married and live a very traditional life. And he just didn't see that. Like, he just didn't see that happening for him in his life. So he was kind of a bit of an oddball. He was shy, didn't have a lot of friends. His friends that are people that would comment about him and did remember him back in high school and like middle school, remembered him as just being kind of like an odd guy, a really strange guy, one who kind of faded into the background and very nondescript. He wasn't like a genius, I don't know if he really participated in too much, but he had kind of a little core group of people that would kind of tolerate him, I guess would be the best way to put that. He did start drinking, as we talked about. He was drinking in high school, and I guess after his parents had split up and then they kind of looked in on Jeff and they realized that he was kind of in trouble, they sort of tried to, sort of provide him with a little direction. So his dad initially said, let's get you into university or college. So he was signed up at the University of Ohio. Well, he drank his way out of that. So after 2 or 3 semesters, first year or whatever, that was kind of a wash and he wasn't going to go back. Then his parents, his stepmother and father said to him, why don't you join the army? Maybe that'll make something of your life. So he did that, and he actually did pretty well. He did the boot camp and the training, and kind of, I think the routine and sort of the orders and the instructions kind of was good for him. He stopped drinking for that period of time, got in pretty good shape, and seemed to enjoy it. I think he sort of enjoyed that life for a while. Then he was stationed over in Germany. And then he discovered the beer there, and that was it. He just sort of figured that the army career was done, and he just focused in on just kind of having a good time, And so they let him go, and he came back to the States. He was in Miami for a little while, and finally he just ran out of money. I think he just sort of like was basically living, penny to penny, I think, living on a beach for a while. And then finally he just phoned his dad and said, send me money. And his dad said, I'm not sending you money, but I will send you a plane ticket. So when his dad went to pick him up at the airport, he noticed right away that Jeff was drunk. He was there coming off the plane and he had already been drinking. So they said to him, you really got to kind of get your life in order here and sort of make something of yourself. So he started on this path of kind of like dead end jobs and sort of seedy apartments, and then got sort of, fired from this, got a job doing that. And that was kind of his life until he discovered his interest of this, meeting men, bringing them back to his apartment, drugging them, doing things to their body, suffocating them or smothering them, and then doing further things with their bodies until he was caught.
Wow.
Sorry, halfway through that, all I kept thinking was that's just what we need, a fit serial killer.
Yeah, right.
Well, I was thinking we always have a friend that just accepts us. Like, that was the one key I got out of there. I was like, am I that friend?
Funny how we all kind of took some different things.
Dang.
Except the important part.
In reading some of the notes, and we talked about this last time, but he admitted to 17 killings, charged with 16. Tell us a little about that, and do you think that there were more?
That was in Wisconsin, those numbers that you just mentioned, and they actually had Jeff confessing to 17 killings. He was identifying the victims through photographs mostly, because if you remember, this is back in 1991, so there was DNA, but it was really very much in its early stages, and so they weren't able to rely on it as today. So they really had to rely on Jeff telling them the truth and sort of telling them everything that he could about those victims in terms of what he remembered about them, where it was that he picked them up, roughly the dates. And apparently he was really good at remembering dates and roughly what period of time of the month these encounters occurred. But yeah, he confessed actually to one person that they were never able to find any trace of that person. So with all the other victims that he killed, he was able to say, yeah, this is that person, this is their photograph. But there was something of that victim. There was either like a driver's license or a piece of jewelry or a bone or a skull or something of that person that they could say, this ties him directly to Dahmer. There was this one victim where Jeff picked out the picture and said, yeah, I remember meeting him. I brought him back to my apartment, did the whole routine of drugging and killing, but they didn't have anything other than the man's name and photograph. So they said, you know what, we don't want to take a chance that this could be appealed, so we're just going to go with the 16 that we know we've got him on. He actually pled guilty. He didn't try and get away with this. Like he said, I'm going to own up to all of this. Where it was in terms of the court case was really to decide his sanity or insanity. But they actually have to put those charges out, and so they had to reflect on that in terms of the numbers. There was also a person that he confessed to killing back in Ohio, and that was, of course, back when he was 18, 19 years old, and they would have never known about this young man, Stephen Hicks. Other than the fact that Dahmer said, I did kill somebody in Ohio back when I was still living at that house where I grew up. And it was a guy that I met, he was hitchhiking. He was on his way to a music festival. I picked him up. I brought him back to my house. We kind of hung out for a while. We drank, we had some beers, and we were wrestling around. I wanted him to stay. He wanted to leave. And so I hit him on the head with something really hard, and it killed him. And so they brought in that detective, that one that stopped him back on that Ohio road 13 years earlier. And he brought with him a bunch of pictures. And because he said, these are sort of the disappeared men that we have from that age range, from that time period. So hopefully this is one of the ones that, you can help us identify. And so he picked him up right away. He said, that's the guy. And he even said to him, I remember the guy was wearing a retainer, and they found that retainer back in those woods, as well as some bones and remains. So again, like he once he started to confess, he confessed. And I don't personally believe that there are other victims out there. I think that they felt that he really wanted to get all of this off his chest, that, he felt the only way he was ever going to be maybe not even forgiven, but that he would ever be able to go forward would be to just to confess it all.
Gotcha. Wow.
Yeah, I read that he, the first killing, he tried to, there was such a time gap between the first killing and then the consecutive ones that followed, that he tried to suppress the feelings of doing anything murderous, tried to cover it up, act like it never happened, tried to forget it himself that it happened, tried to go on with his life. But he said it's just, once you do something like that, he said, you can never forget it. You can never recover from it. You just have to go let it run its course, basically.
Right. Yeah, you have to live with it. Absolutely. And I think for the longest time, especially initially, I think he lived in fear. He was able to talk his way out of this, this ticket with this guy on this cop on this Ohio highway late at night. But I don't think he thought, I got away with it scot-free. I think he really did think that at some point someone was going to maybe knock on his door and say, we've got this missing teenager. But no one ever saw him being picked up. So they didn't really know what happened. The family, said goodbye to their son, their, 18 or 19-year-old son. He was off to a music festival, and he never ever comes back. And they have no idea what happened to him for all those years. So, in a way, thankfully, Dahmer was the kind of person that he was, and he did confess, so that family actually did know what ended up happening to him. But I think for the longest time, he was in fear that, he was going to be found out. And then there did come a period when he realized he had gotten away with it. And, I don't know if it necessarily made him feel like, I got away with it once, I can try it again. I think he really did feel as though this damaged me forever. Like I'm a damaged human because of what I did. It doesn't really matter what I do, but there was that desire where, he was trying so hard to repress his sexuality. And then when he got that note, there was that note that someone passed him in a library, saying, I'll give you a blowjob in the library bathroom if you want to join me. And he said, I'm not fooling anybody, so I don't really know necessarily the connection he made from, I'm not fooling anybody about my sexuality. I might as well go on this spree of killing and, whatever. But to him, his fantasy about having a companion was really selfish in a lot of ways. If you think about it, he wanted a companion that he could basically control, do whatever he wanted to that person. He didn't want to have any kind of confrontation or even really conversation. I mean, I think he was able to keep a conversation going for as long as it took to get that victim into his apartment. But, you know, I mean, he didn't have a lot going on in his life. So, I mean, he didn't have a lot to really talk about necessarily. You know, he was kind of socially awkward as well, you know, and even his dad said that he was like that as a young man himself, but he kind of got out of it. He grew to learn, you know, how you engage with people, ask them lots of questions about themselves. People love to talk about themselves. So he learned how to be a social person. Unfortunately, Jeff never learned that, you know, but he also had fantasies that were very warped, you know, and his idea of a relationship, you know, was really basically just, you know, I want to do whatever I want to do with you and be able to put you aside when I'm bored or when I have to go to work or when I'm watching television or a movie, making dinner or whatever. And then, you know, come back to this relationship when I feel like having sex, you know, so.
Yours is the next one.
So he said that alcohol, reading more about him, he said that alcohol
called it his medicine.
Helped him kill because he actually didn't like the act of killing. It was just to an end. And that, do you think if he would have sought help for his alcoholism, would there be less murders or perhaps no murders? Or do you think that he just would have used something else like drugs?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think for him, you know, he was very dependent on the alcohol. So, and I think that for him, it gave him a little bit of courage, you know, like to do some of those things that he did, you know, like when he was faced with approaching those cops, you know, when they had the young man who had stumbled out of his apartment and the neighbors are there and they're trying to say this kid needs help. And Dahmer, I mean, he could have just so easily like walked into the apartment, gone up to his apartment and just let this thing unfold. But, you know, it kind of gave him the courage, you know, to be bold and to walk up to the cops and say, you know, what's going on here? And them saying, you know, do you know this young man? You know, this is the state we just found him in. People called the police because this young man seems to be in danger or hurt or, you know, he's buck naked. We not, you know, he doesn't have any clothes on. He's stumbling, you know, he seems to be intoxicated. We're just trying to help him. And, you know, Dahmer kind of just very emboldened said, oh, no, he's my boyfriend, you know, and this has happened before. And, you know, he's gotten away. So he was able to, I mean, part of it, I think, was, you know, he had some good success with sort of talking his way out of situations in the past, not just with police, but with other people as well, people in authority. But yeah, I think it kind of gave him that courage. It emboldened him a little bit to just sometimes do the things that he did. And then some of the more awful things that he was doing to bodies, like skinning them and dismembering them and taking viscera out of the bodies, like it fascinated him. But in terms of like disposing of the bodies and things, he really needed to do that in order to be able to get through those acts. So yeah, it absolutely was.
We're laughing at Frack over there because he's like.
And here's a weird part. My father used to be a surgeon, so you think by now I'd be like, yeah, but I don't think it's the visual part that bugs me. I think it's just the hearing of the words. Like I'm just
like skinning someone. That's
like,
come on.
He drilled holes into people's heads and poured acid and bleach in because
like
zombies.
By the way, just side note, I love how my blur background blurs out the logo immediately. So
it's like, we're not sponsored by them.
That's funny.
Anyways,
That's awesome.
still that.
We love you.
Do you know why Dahmer opened up to Patrick? I mean, I know that we talked about he was just ready to get it off his chest, but why Patrick? Not, you know, why not somebody else?
Well, Patrick first came to the apartment where Dahmer was. And so, you know, just prior to Kennedy and his partner getting that call, Dahmer, you know, what his experience had been was, you know, he had this victim. He had been drinking a lot and he was kind of, you know, inebriated. This kid or this young man had like took a swing at him and punched him and had disappeared. And, you know, he didn't really know what was going to happen. I mean, he might have thought, okay, well, the guy's just gone and that's it. I won't ever hear from him again. Next thing he knows, he's getting a knock at the door and there's these two, you know, uniformed police officers and the guy with the handcuff on his arm. So, you know, he's kind of like, he is drunk, but he's kind of got to get his wits together and have to sort of like, again, talk his way, he hopes, out of the situation. So the cops are there and they're basically just there to help this guy. You know, we just want to get his handcuff off. You know, if you've got the key, we'll get this thing off him, give it back to you. You can get on with your evening. We can get on with our lives, you know, like just that'll be that. And so he says, okay, come on in. And, he's in his mind thinking, I don't know where this key is. Like, because in the past, he didn't really care about the key. The key's probably long gone. Because what he would do is he would handcuff the victim. But if he needed to get the handcuff off, the arm would be cut off, right? So he could just like slide it off the wrist. And so he didn't have to really worry about the keys. But here are these cops, they're demanding the key. And this guy who can sort of basically say to him, this guy was trying to attack me. He was sort of saying all sorts of weird things. He didn't really know sort of what was happening. But anyway, so Dahmer is, kind of stumbling around, looking around for the key. The cops are noticing that there's this awful smell in the apartment. And, it's getting kind of odd and weird. And, he's not coming up with the key. And so finally they're looking at these pictures that are sitting on a coffee table, and they're looking at them and they're saying, like, how come this guy has pictures from the coroner's office? Like, where did he get pictures from the morgue from? They realize that these pictures are actually from inside the apartment. And so they realize right away, like, oh my God, this guy is a bad guy. So they say, one of the cops says to the other, grab him. They do. And then they kind of wrestle him down to the ground. So in Dahmer's mind, he was kind of attacked by these two uniformed police officers, and they wrestled with him and they, kind of restrained him, got him handcuffed. The next person that he saw was Pat Kennedy. So this big, huge, 6'7" guy comes through the door. He's in a suit, and, he looks pretty friendly. And so he says to this guy, I guess he realizes this is a detective, says, are you going to beat me up too? And Pat says, no, I'm not going to beat you up too. Like, he says, I'm just going to talk to you for a second. Just give me half a second. We're going to leave here though. And I'm going to take you back to the police station and we can talk there. And so I think he just was right away, like, friendly. He just sort of did what he needed to do to build that rapport sort of instantly. As far as what Dahmer was thinking, I think it was just like, here's a friendly face finally. And here's somebody who, is smiling at me. He doesn't know sort of the full extent of all the horrors yet, but so far so good. And so he just really kind of glommed onto him. And Pat was really, like, do you need anything? Once they got to the police station, can I get you coffee? Do you want some cigarettes? How about a sandwich? When was the last time you ate? And just really sort of tried to look out for Dahmer's best interests, I guess, or his, kind of immediate needs. And I don't know whether Dahmer had really ever experienced that before, certainly not with police, usually in authority, they're asking him questions and he's just sort of trying to say what he needs to say to get out of the situation. This one wasn't going anywhere. And he seemed to be willing to listen to him. He wasn't mad. He wasn't angry. He's saying to him, we need to talk about what we found in your fridge. What they found in the fridge was a severed head. But Patrick was just saying, just tell me about it. Like, who is this guy? Let's just talk, and I'm going to listen. I'm not going to judge you. So I think that was really what caused there to be that rapport. And I think once he realized that, this guy likes me, he just sort of did and said everything he could to continue to get Dahmer to trust him.
We opened your fridge and you don't have any milk.
We noticed.
But we did notice on the bottom shelf.
Kind of hard to miss.
So later on, I noticed that I think it was the other detective, his partner, that asked him, do you think that he is actually sexually attracted to you? And I loved how you touched on that in the book too. Like, well, it's possible, I guess, but I did treat him like a human. I was just like, oh my God, that would make so much more sense for somebody just to be like, oh, okay, let me talk to you.
Right. Yeah.
And like I said, I didn't know that part of the book, but I was thinking the same thing. This person comes in. The first thing is that when you hear about, in the psychological field, is that you want to build that rapport. You're treating the other person like they're a human being. You're validating them. You're acknowledging them. Like you said, hey, when's the last time you ate? Showing concern. And it's like, oh my gosh, I'm not just a incarcerated member.
I'm not just a murderer.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Although he may be, and maybe Patrick didn't know by then he was completely a murderer, except for the head in the fridge. But but still, exactly. And he didn't get angry at him and huff and puff and whatever. And I said I can see that being also a hulking 6'7" man, kind of scary too. But seeing somebody being so gentle with somebody that tall, but being gentle with him at the same time, even though he may have known that I found this head, I found these things and these photos, and just wanted to talk to him. Hey, let's have a conversation.
Yeah. Well, and Pat, if you know or remember too in the book, like he initially, like he was kind of interested in like, well, he was a Roman Catholic, but he was also interested at one point in pursuing, maybe that as a vocation. And the idea of a confessional, and sort of trying to do and say things to make that person feel comfortable, to trust you, and to sort of just tell you everything. And, having met Pat, in person, I can say like he's a really charismatic guy. Like, he's really charming himself, and, big laugh, big smile. He was a really, really nice man. And I could see myself, like, I mean, not that I was confessing anything to him when we met, but I mean, I could see myself being able to open up to someone like him, because he was really, like, you kind of got that feeling like, there wasn't anything you could say to him that would shock him, like he, even at 34, he had a couple of years under his belt as a seasoned homicide detective and had seen a lot at that point. Maybe not quite all the things that he saw with Dahmer, but, he had that experience. And so he kind of gave that impression of like, nothing you could say is going to shock me, like, I'm just here to listen, and just, go ahead and talk. Dahmer did sometimes withhold some things, but he never lied. He was always truthful, I think.
So in all the notes that you got and in the conversations with Patrick that you were lucky enough to have, and I'm jealous, what is the one thing that stood out that was like, oh my gosh, I never would have guessed that about Dahmer? Is there that one thing that was just like the whoa?
Let's see.
There's so much.
There's so much.
He liked
it's
man.
also hard because you're reading things, and you're you sort of like exposed to all sorts of little stories about Dahmer here and there, and so then it's like, okay, well, where did I read that or hear that, and just to go back to all the notes and everything. Yeah, I guess in terms of the fact that, let's see.
Sorry, caught you off guard with that one.
Yeah,
my bad.
No, I know.
You got a big list to choose from.
I feel like I know so much about Dahmer. It's like, when did I learn that about him, per se? I guess one of the things that I did think was kind of interesting, because again, it was a true crime story, was how much they initially, because Patrick had lived in Miami. Sorry, not Patrick. Dahmer had lived in Miami when he got back from Europe after getting kind of washed out of the army. And he was there in Florida around the time that Adam Walsh went missing. And so when they caught Dahmer, like they sort of, they do sort of a background and a profile sort of on people, just in terms of like, they do a timeline. Where was he living, and sort of what was going on? And were there any crimes that are similar to what we now know he did here that happened back then? So they try and tie that in. Mm-hmm. And so when they looked at it, and they realized, man, he was in Florida around that time that Adam Walsh went missing. When they found Adam, they found just his head, right? Like he had been beheaded, and that was all they found. So when they found this head in Dahmer's fridge, they're like, okay, there's another connection, So they were sort of really hot on the idea that maybe they finally found the killer of Adam Walsh. So they sent, Miami detectives, and they really, really thought that this was like finally a break in that case. And, he's looking at the pictures of Adam, and he's saying, like, this is a little kid,
like, a kid. This ain't my thing.
Kids.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so they did remind him. They said, well, a couple of your victims were like 14, 17. These are younger people, but he kept maintaining the idea of like, well, I didn't know they were that young. I thought they were older than they were. But yeah, that he wasn't interested in kids. I mean, I guess it didn't really, that doesn't surprise me, because you often know, like, these guys will have a target group. Some are interested in children, others are interested in men, others are interested in sex workers, old ladies, whatever their victimology, right? And so, yeah, but I guess the idea that they were so convinced that they had finally solved the Adam Walsh case. And of course, years and years later, they finally, discovered it was probably Otis O'Toole that killed Adam Walsh.
Yeah, and that's a story that I kept up with in my later teenage years going into college, was the Adam Walsh story.
Yeah.
What was that time frame? Like, what years was that? I forget.
80s.
81, I think, is when he went missing. So exactly 10 years. Yeah, 10 years before Dahmer was arrested, actually. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I was born in 81, and my mom, I guess you could go to Sears at the time and have a video made that was like your video profile of that you would turn over to the cops in case something like that happened. And my mom
Right.
had done one. I had one done, and I had it on video. And I told these guys about it before, and they're like, "That's so weird. I've never heard of it." But that was why, is because of the Adam Walsh case. Sears started doing video profiles that you could hand over to the police. So it would say, "Hi, my name is TJ Alcock. I'm 1 year old, 3 years old, whatever it was." And I remember she had one made when I was about 4. I will. And I'm on video giving my profile, so that way they had it saved, that instead of handing over a photo, here's a video of my mannerisms and the way I talk and this and that.
Yeah, your voice and everything.
And it was all because of that Adam Walsh story.
They did fingerprints and photos too, in addition to that tape, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yep. Well, John Walsh, Adam's father, like, he's just so, instrumental in so many ways in terms of like profiling and his show of, catching killers and things like that. But in the time after his son was abducted, like he said, the police, they really had nothing as far as missing kids. They were still almost under that belief of, well, he has to be missing for 24 hours. It's like, this is a 6-year-old kid, you're not going to not know where he is for 24 hours. But they didn't have any kind of resources. They had no programs. They had nothing as far as, we need a poster. Well, the Walshes made a poster because there was nothing where they could actually, a template that they could use to put in the picture, put in the age and the color of the eyes and the color of the hair and last seen wearing. None of that was established. They had nothing like the kind of supports that they have now for things to do with, missing and abducted children.
Yeah. Wow.
So, and that's really scary. I mean, I think we were talking about National Rum Day not long ago, and I told, for mine, we should usually have a meme or something, and I'm telling people, put my picture on a bottle of rum. Nobody that I know, drinks milk. So it was around that. But I do want to talk about the book real quick, as I know we've talked about it the whole night, but I do want to promote it though. But there's a specific thing that I noticed, and I redid the stats for this morning. So on Amazon itself, and as you mentioned, the book's been available online on Amazon at least since June 24th of this year. But it's jumped up already. It's already got 43 certified global ratings. So it's got an overall rating of 4.6 out of 5 stars, which brings down to
yeah.
Oh, heck yeah. Oh, it's about to have another 5-star.
We own it.
So right now 66% are 5-star, 31% are 4-star, and 4% is a 3-star. And that 4% is just one person. But, and I think we've already answered this earlier, that rating specifically said, this book is very detailed with the crimes committed. So this is going to be kind of a loaded question because I think we've already answered it. But I mean, when you think about how books are written, when you're talking about serial killers or a crime, or, a descriptor of like Frick said earlier, Tom Clancy or something of that nature. Do you agree or disagree with the severity? Like as I said, you've seen the notes, you've seen Patrick Kennedy's handwriting and the works that he's done, and then what you've now been able to convey into that work, Grilling Dahmer. Do you think that is a fair assessment, or do you agree or disagree with that statement?
I think when we chatted about this before, I said, well, to me, I think the book is graphic. I mean, it's hard for me to sort of have the opinion about it because I've been working with the material for such a long time. Right. But I like to think of it as being graphic, but not gratuitous, so that it's sort of as graphic as it needs to be in order to sort of make the point of the story in terms of this is what this guy did. And it's all there because he was confessing to the police. But I hope anyways, that it's not gratuitous and that it sort of goes way over what it needs to go to in order to just sort of like be sensational. Like I really don't want that to be the remarks that, it kind of, for the sake of trying to gross out a reader, this person went way, way too far. I think it's okay to say that it was a graphic read and that there was a lot of details. And I often will say to people, it's not for everybody. I mean, not every book is for everybody, obviously. And sometimes with true crime, if you're someone who's not familiar with that genre, if you've never really read true crime before, you're probably going to find this a little bit much. But, it is the nature of the subject.
Yeah. So, and again, I'm not sure, I don't recall if you were on the webcast yet or not, but again, even our friend Natalie has said, even she flinched once or twice.
But a lot of it's your own imagination, though. Like how she describes it, you're like, and you gross yourself out with your imagination. Like in all honesty.
Yeah, like you guys are right now talking about skinning.
Yes, and you're grossing yourself out, and I'm just like, cool.
Yeah. Which again, it still bugs me. I'm like, I am the son of a surgeon, and still I cannot get over that. So weird. But anyways,
I don't know. I think the drilling in the head while the people were still alive and putting acid in their brains, that's what shocked me the most.
Yeah.
Now when you say acid,
He wanted to create people who had no willpower of their own, just zombies. Basically, he could take them out and use them whenever he wanted to.
So like
he didn't like having relations with dead people. He wanted them alive, but that was basically the only way he could get them.
So kind of like a frontal lobotomy almost.
Yeah, very close to that. Yeah, he kind of, he wanted to kind of keep them in this state of what I described as kind of like a zombie boyfriend. He wanted to be able to use that partner, if you will, but didn't really want that person to be able to fight back or say, I don't feel like doing that right now, or that hurts me, or I have to leave because I have a job to go to, or, kids to take care of, or anything like that. He just wanted to be able to use that person.
Sorry.
Is that gonna be your new safe word, Dahmer?
No. It's gonna be grilling. We're grilling.
So we did post the book link into the chat, but yes. I think that
Awesome,
wraps up kind of our questions and moves us into the You Decide bracket.
All right, let me
The game
transition.
portion of the night.
Okay, I transitioned.
All right, we're transitioning.
Do you want to play a game?
Sure.
Again, you're in that creepy ass low voice. Actually, it's more jealousy because I sound like a flute. Hi guys.
Hey buddy.
These are my friends.
You guys are all down in Florida. Is that correct? I'm just curious. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
That's what I thought.
We're within like 3-5 miles of each other. I forget where he lives sometimes. But yeah, we're real close.
Frick's literally one subdivision away, and then Patty's obviously next to me, even though she's at Dahmer's house. And then Frack lives he's about 3 miles from us, 4 miles from us.
Cool.
All right.
Yeah, we usually, like we did with the pre-interview, we do the show
Here at the house.
all here at the house, but we're doing it so late at night. My little 4-year-old is asleep, and he won't sleep. He'll go, Auntie Ian. Oh, there it is, drink.
All right. Got him. So yeah, and by the way, don't forget, your child's name is Volcano.
Yes, Volcano. My bad.
Little Volcano.
That's what he loves volcanoes, so he nicknamed himself Volcano on a day that he was home from school and we were recording.
Is that Aria?
Oh, there she is.
Yeah, she's just joined us here.
Oh, you're just waking up.
And now viewership went up 100%.
She's like, why are you talking to me? Go away.
There is a lot of voices.
All right, why are you not rubbing me?
Who takes the first one?
All right.
Usually Frick, Paddy Wack.
Yep.
Oh, wait, hold on. Well, she doesn't know yet. We have to explain.
Going to describe it, but go ahead.
No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No?
I'm sorry.
Describe.
So it's a You Decide bracket. You're going to pick out of the 2 choices which one that you would rather have or be a part of or do or whatever. Like we are choosing things that you killed by. So
your weapon of choice.
Weapon of choice.
Okay.
This is what you're gonna use.
What you're going to use. I interpreted it as what you wanted to be killed with, so I apologize.
Oh, okay.
All right. So the first 2 choices are hammer or screwdriver. What would be your weapon of choice?
Oh, a hammer.
Okay.
Damn, she knew that like off the bat. It's like, I got this. All right, Frick.
Hammer.
No.
Well, I would go with hammer also.
Yeah, I think we all unanimously agree on hammer. So
Okay.
social drink. All right, the next one. Would you rather use your bare hands or a rolling pin?
I think I would rather use a tool like a rolling pin or something. Yeah. I just can't see. I have little hands. I know they look big on the screen, but I have little hands, and I just can't imagine doing that. Yeah. So I think I need something to wield.
So your hands basically look big because you're kind of like the guy showing a fish, like put it like this. I'm sorry, Patty. What was that?
I said I would need something to disassociate myself with the act, like, oh, it's the rolling pin that's killing them, not me.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
we found our serial killer in the group.
Rolling
It wasn't
I don't
me
want
that
to be
killed him.
that. I don't want to be that hands-on.
Right,
Literally.
exactly.
Yeah.
All right,
Rolling
okay.
pin.
So I'm saying bare hands.
I'm saying rolling pin.
All by yourself.
Oh, by my copyright.
Miss Patty.
Where are we at? Frying pan or a chef's knife?
Ooh.
Okay, why did you get that excited about this?
I seem to be really into this bludgeoning thing, but I'm going to say a frying pan just because I think a knife is a little too grisly for me. Like the blood, the cutting, like I just thought, when I cut myself, it hurts so badly, right? So even though I'm killing somebody, presumably I don't really care how it hurts them or whatever, but I don't know. I think the frying pan.
I want
Okay.
arterial spray.
Like that, I think I'm changing my answer. I was gonna go with a knife because it would be quick, but like you're saying, all the blood and stuff. If you could get them really good with a frying pan and hit them on the head, and it just kills them.
Yeah, well, it might take 3 or 4 blows, but
I'm straight up. I'm straight up Michael Myers in this thing. Chef knife.
really?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you can slice, you can dice, julienne fries.
hiding the knives that are sitting on the counter now.
There's a knife in every room of this house. You know that.
But they're just open and ready.
We are. I'm weird, and like, it's the escape plan of if somebody came in the house, no matter which room I was in, I have
Weapon.
a weapon that can kill them. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Frack, what did you choose?
Okay, so I'm hearing great, points from each side for the, But my only concern is the fact that Patty and Robyn are getting a little too excited about explaining the process. It'll take 2 or 3, possibly 3 to 4 bludgeoning hits. It's like, well, if it's an iron skillet, it's more weight, less hits.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Is it an 8-inch iron skillet, or how are we doing
Yeah,
this?
it's just cast iron.
Exactly.
Yeah,
But I mean, as I said, I do like the more blunt force trauma kind of thing. But I mean, chef's knives will be a lot quicker because you can easily cut an artery or just do something like that. So I would feel more comfortable with the chef's knives because
you got all the cleanup. Yeah.
Frick, were you were chef knife?
Yeah, I wanted their arterial spray. So yeah.
All right, you two ladies drink.
all right, you two ladies, yeah. So Robyn and Patty, drink.
Okay.
Mine is.
I should grab the knife. I'm like, oh god.
Yeah, here's an intro. Shovel or a monkey wrench?
Ooh, that's weird.
I mean, I'm gonna need the shovel afterwards.
Well, the shovel is very efficient.
More.
I mean, a big old.
With the shovel.
Yeah, but a big old monkey wrench is not as, you don't need as much wind up because it's like.
It's so heavy. Yeah, but I mean, the utility of a shovel, you can beat somebody the hell up with it, and then you dig the hole. You're ready.
Oh, that's what I was
Then
going to say.
you can chop them up too.
Shovel, yeah.
Yeah.
And you can
It's
use the
very
side to
efficient.
actually, get the temple.
Right, I'm going shovel.
Okay, a little specific there.
I would say shovel too.
Yeah,
And the thing is too, if you get caught, and they're still, they're reporting about this, it's like, do you really want to be the person known as the one that killed somebody with a monkey wrench?
Right.
Like, it sounds a
Oh,
little.
it's the monkey wrench murderer.
I love the fact. I love the fact that Robyn's concern is like, how are they going to talk about me on the news?
Be known as the monkey wrench murderer.
Oh my
The
God.
name, it just calls out for something like that, right?
Because some
Murderer.
stupid reporter is going to have a stupid headline. You're going to be like, no. Just no.
No. Go ahead, Frick.
We are at hammer or chef knife.
Hammer or chef knife.
Yes.
Okay, so we're mixing it up now. Oh my
Yeah,
god.
Well,
it
it's
is
a
bracket
bracket.
style.
Two winners.
Brackets.
Oh, I see. Okay, so hammer or chef. I'm gonna go back with hammer.
Hammer time.
Hammer time.
Yeah, I'm with hammer.
I think I'm hammer too because you've got both sides. So you've got both sides. You got your bludgeon, and then you got, the other side is basically a knife.
That's
And
true.
I'm thinking I'm not thinking about killing real people, so I'm thinking about killing zombies here. So for me,
Oh,
a hammer
on.
would be.
whack. No.
I'm a big Walking Dead guy, so
Well, I've
Hammer
already
over.
lost. So which one are you choosing, Frack?
I said hammer time.
Oh,
hammer time.
I'm sorry. I thought you were just saying thingy.
Where are you at, Frick?
Well, I wanted the knife, but whatever.
Ah,
She's-
you get to
she's-
drink.
I want the
She's supposed to see
blood.
that.
He likes it messy.
You get to drink. All right, Patty, go ahead.
Rolling pin or shovel?
Utility, baby. Gotta go shovel.
Utility.
Yeah,
Yeah, shovel. I like that shovel.
me too.
Yeah.
Okay, you don't have to be too excited when you say this. It's just a game.
I know. But we have winter here, so we use shovels all the time.
True.
I already
Yeah.
have one.
What's that? Winter.
Scraping the windshield.
That's right. Yeah.
What's the weather like?
We don't know what winter is. Yeah. What's the weather like where you're at?
Nice and fall.
Actually, it's not too bad today. It was a little overcast and we had some rain, but it's going to be like 30 over the weekend. So.
Okay, I'm not ready for
Hold on. What is not too bad?
Probably 50.
I think it was something like 12 today.
Holy cow.
That's not too bad.
Hey, there's no snow on the ground. Nothing to shovel yet.
Wow.
It was
Wow.
like 90 here.
Yeah.
90.
90 and rainy.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Overcast and rainy.
My
It's not
AC
too
is sitting
bad.
on 71 right now.
It's not
Oh,
too bad.
gosh.
It's
It was
12.
only
It was
90
awesome.
degrees.
Look at
today.
That's
Frack.
awesome.
Poor
It was-
Frack.
It was just 12. No big deal.
That's
Awesome.
crazy.
I do miss that Florida weather, I have to say.
I don't. I'm happy to get out of Florida, but we have too much family here.
How the
Too much
hell?
family here. I would not live in.
North Carolina, Tennessee. Is
Yeah,
like
I
my
want
happy place.
seasons. Florida ain't got no
Oh.
seasons. It's warm and it's hot.
But I
Yeah.
don't want to be somewhere where it's always cold either. So
Yeah.
No.
I have
No,
family. I have
weather-
famy in upstate New York,
Jesus.
so we go
I
up
could
and
not do 12 degrees.
12 degrees though. Woo.
Could you imagine
Woo.
January, February?
Right now it's
God.
78, mostly cloudy.
You
Yeah.
don't even have to kill anyone. Just come outside.
That's
You
hilarious.
just die.
All right, we'll finish the bracket with hammer or shovel.
No.
Shovel. Shovel.
I'm
I'm hammer.
gonna say hammer again.
I don't know. Shovel has
Hammer.
functionality because it has blunt, it has
So I'm
sharp, and it
saying
has
shovel,
utility.
so you're the tiebreaker.
Too big to
Shovel.
carry around.
Shovel.
And
Shovel,
No.
sorry.
Oh, I meant like if it was happening at my home. Like someone came in and you got to kill
Run,
them.
Whack, run!
Yeah, like someone breaks into your home. I think I would grab the shovel. I don't know.
So I was hammer. Robyn, you were hammer.
I was hammer.
Shovel.
Shovel.
Yeah, I guess if I was a serial killer and I was killing people, probably a hammer.
Which
But,
one are you
like,
picking?
In
I'm on
self-defense,
to-
I grab a shovel.
You're right now. You're the pick. We're tied.
Oh, I
two
thought
and
she
two.
already chose shovel. I'm sorry.
No, she's over here debating herself.
Oops. I gotta look.
What's the
Sorry.
best way?
I'm just going.
She went with shovel.
All right, so shovel is the winner. Hammer
Shovel
triggers drink.
takes the bracket. Pew, 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 pew.
Oh my gosh. Well, at least we know a little too much about each other now and our killing habits.
Right?
Yes,
Right?
yes, yes.
Yeah.
Oh my
Pretty
gosh.
funny. Well, this was awesome. Thank you
Yeah,
so
that's
much.
cool.
Like
Super cool.
the incredible insight, the book. I can't wait to read it. Like I'm so excited. So
Oh, well, thank you very much. I really appreciate you guys chatting with me about it and talking about Pat and Dahmer and all things. Everything.
Canadian
actually.
the Boot came out.
We covered a lot of
we
stuff.
did. Yes, love learning about your story and your family life and all of that stuff too. Like
Oh,
Yeah.
thanks.
definitely super, super cool. Is there any plans to are they doing anything with a movie or anything like that? Or have they kind of tapped out those resources on that, you think?
I don't know. Like, yeah, but before when the book came out, like just in the limited run, I did have a few people who would reach out to me and approach me about the idea of, possibly optioning the film rights for it. Nothing really came of it, but I don't know. Like, I mean, I suppose if someone was interested, they would contact Wild Blue and see, if the rights were available, and I'm sure they would be. There is a lot
Yeah.
of stuff about Dahmer, and there's the thing coming out with Netflix. I guess it's later on next year. The one that's being made right now. So, but you know what? I mean, it just seems like every few years there seems to be something about him. So I can honestly say, like, I'm not pushing to have it happen, but I think that it possibly
Sure.
could happen, and that would be awesome.
Right.
Awesome. What is next for you?
Well, I'm working on another manuscript. I'm working on, it's a true crime as well, although it's not a focus on one case. It's actually a number of different cases. And the thing that kind of strings them all together is the fact that all of the killers are what they call family annihilators. So people like Chris Watts, John List, Diane Downs is on there, Jeffrey McDonald. So these are people who, for whatever reason, have decided that they're going to kill everybody in their family. And, for most people, family is a source of support and caring and love. And for whatever reason, these people have kind of just, something's happened or something's, they feel that something's going to happen, that they have to sort of take those measures. And so unfortunately, over the course of many years, there's quite a few cases like that, and so I'm interested in kind of profiling the cases and then talking with, somebody like a forensic psychologist or psychiatrist, and just sort of finding out sort of where they think the person's mind was at when they decided they were going to do these horrible things. So.
Oh my gosh, should we come back on the show so we can talk about it?
I was going to say, because
sure, yeah.
Well, and also wasn't there, I thought there was one here in Lakeland sometime in the last few years. I thought was the Lake Hollingsworth house.
The person who was in the city council or something like that.
Yeah.
No. I think it was somebody externally who killed the family.
I thought there was
there was a break-in and the guy.
Gotcha. There was a
husband and wife.
Gotcha.
Oh, I thought you were talking about the kids from our high school. Or I thought you were going with that. My bad.
Oh, yeah, Jeremy.
So definitely keep us in the loop, so that way we can get a hold of a copy and do some reading, and then have you back on for that, because we would.
That would be great. I would love it. You guys have been awesome.
So
be awesome.
Well, once again, full circle again, Natalie, thank you for helping me get in contact with Robyn, the great Robyn Maharaj, co-author again of the book Grilling Dahmer, available on Amazon. We got the link up on chat already for her.
It is.
Yes, I did.
Give it also a great rating, because there's nothing less that you should give than nothing less than a 5.5.
I'll go do that tonight.
but once again, we want to say thank you.
How do you knock somebody for writing a book that's a little too detailed?
And it's listed as true crime.
In fairness, though, I nitpicked that little comment right there. But I mean, but it said overall good read. They're just kind of saying, hey, listen, if you're into this kind of stuff, that's cool. If not, then just read or beware.
Be forewarned.
Yeah, but why grade her wrong or bad because you personally didn't like?
Because you can't handle it.
Yeah,
because it's called the internet. It's gonna happen.
Yeah, because it's got exactly
100%. Karen.
So, but anyway, again. Thank you once again so much to Robyn Maharaj. Thank you for joining us tonight. Thank you for hanging out with us, participating as well, playing with us.
This is great. Lots of fun. Thanks.
Yes. No. And again,
thank you, Aria. Sitting over there in the corner.
Yeah. Woof woof, bark bark. Good girl. And again, thank you to everybody who was jumping on chat. Everybody who's been viewing. Again, we appreciate it so much. Whoever joined us, cheers.
Cheers.
Yes.
But once let's just close up the night. We got a couple minutes here left, and our closing quote of the evening, I thought it was only appropriate. And this is a quote from the late and great Patrick Kennedy himself. So the quote being, not surprisingly, the inability to maintain healthy relationships is common amongst many serial killers. So have healthy relationships, psychos.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
Robyn, don't go anywhere after we sign off. But don't forget, if you want to donate or sponsor, reach out to us at ffpw.live. All right, guys, that's going to be a wrap for the show for the night. So sign on to social media, turn off the news, don't text and drive. Epstein did not kill himself. 1, 2, 3, 4.
You got
it playing, or you just singing it like a goof?
I was singing it, but now I'm transitioning. Bye, guys.